Welcome to Vassals of Kingsgrave, everyone. Episode 700. Today we have a few of the curators to just talk through the last 100 episodes and see where we've been, how we got from 6 to 700, and enjoy a little time together before our House of the Dragon preview, which will immediately follow this recording. My name is Kevin. I'm Uncle Kevin out in the internets, and I'm joined by Adam.
Hey, this is Adam, also known as Drownstone.
And Bina.
Hey everyone, it's Bina 007.
Well, here we are, 700. Well, I think the biggest, so changing from the forums to Discord happened in this 100, right? That was the summer of 2020.
Yeah.
So episode 600 was April 2020. And we switched to Discord, I think it was July of 2020. And I think that's probably the biggest community change we've seen in the last 100. And I think it's a great one. You know, it definitely changes the dynamic because it's a lot easier to be on Discord, be chronically online all day long when you can have it in your phone. A lot easier to use than the forums.
Yeah, back when Craig was working, we could even record over Discord, which was really amazing. Shout out to FT Ward, OG podcaster, member of this community, who will always say that he misses kind of losing that history of all the old threads. He used to be kind of like the librarian of the threads. So if anyone mentions something, he'd send us and say, this was discussed, 3 years ago in this thread, which you can't do when you switch to a new format. I think having something that was mobile enabled really helped keep the community fresh for sure.
Yeah, I think online Reddit has coalesced all the different forums out in the world, and for people that want that, and then a lot of them have moved to things like Discord, which is good. But that's a good point about the history. I hadn't really thought about it, and it's not just switching formats, but it's pretty hard in Reddit or in Discord to go back and find prior discussions and things that we were saying 3 and 4 years ago. It's a much more sort of in the moment chat.
I think the other technological innovation, which coincided with the lockdowns, was having our first kind of 24-hour Vox Zooms, the Vocathons. And I don't think any of us made the technology or as a software before the pandemic. And this idea, when everyone was feeling very socially isolated, the idea that you could have 24 hours where members of the community could just drop in on each other, just have a chat, was a really beautiful thing that came out of the pandemic. I was really grateful for.
Right, because some people were trapped in apartments for months at that point.
So what did we all talk about, given that there was no new book, no new show? What happened?
I feel like between like 600 and 700, it's like, what is it, like phase 4 of the MCU post Endgame? It's like we're just kind of doing stuff. We're just doing stuff. There's been a lot of cool stuff.
It's really funny. Yeah, I mean, 600, I think 603, the Song of Ice and Fire linear reread, which kind of dominated the 500s, came to an end neatly. And then it neatly went into the Witcher reread.
That one was a good one because it was half read, half reread. So you had sort of people that had read through it, and then some of us that were unsullied going through it for the first time. I mean, that was just a fun series in general. I feel like Sapkowski had a lot of interesting things to say, and probably had more interesting things to say than George in a lot of ways. I don't need to compare him, and he could finish his story. So, okay, I'll stop comparing them.
Ouch.
It's just sort of interesting how when we do reads and rereads and things, sometimes they just gain and lose energy at different points.
But we also saw the return to the fandom, a fan favorite, Shellfish, Peter, our Finnish correspondent, and he created this series of pre-chats.
I love it. I love when we just have creative energy like that. And I also really like the format of those, which they kind of remind me of the Volop Dollop format, like where you sort of have one person who's done some research and they're talking to the rest of the crowd about, okay, here's this vampire legend from the 1400s that a lot of horror and fantasy writers draw inspiration from, and that just sparks a whole conversation from there. Like, I love that format a lot.
You also realize just how learned our community is. I mean, people like Sarah Dr. Blood, who has studied kind of anthropology and has a lot of these myths are created and transmitted through society. Really lucky to kind of research deeply, either privately or for their job. And it adds such, I think, richness to it. And I guess another one that's gone on for a while, but that really you notice it when you look through the episodes, is the video game Hall of Fame, which never does Total War, but nonetheless is valid. But that's like because it brings in other voices, right? It's like Katie, Lady Griffin comes back for that, and you have, different groups of people involved in the different types of cast.
Yeah.
I think the most recent movie franchise created was Duncan Valkerist, who, again, he's studied deeply literary criticism and film criticism, and he started off the World Movie Passport, which was really fun, where a few of us get together and watch different films from around the world and try and learn a little bit about different film cultures from that. I've really enjoyed him doing that, and how he does it with the small baby, I have no idea, but I'm very grateful, because it just gives you a great excuse to go off and watch films you might not have otherwise found. Is this our slowest 100? I think it might be.
Oh, but over 2 years for 100 episodes. But we didn't have a reread of the main series, which those are just a lot of episodes, and we didn't have a TV series within this 100.
Yeah,
So
and when you have a TV, you start getting 3 a week, because you've got a cast, Wolf and Dragon cast.
Yeah.
It definitely gets the episode count going up. Let's talk about this September, like the next 100, because between House of Dragon, The Lord of the Rings, and
our return to relevancy.
One thing that happened in the last 600 is that we attempted to do a Fire and Blood series, but there were so many people and it was so chaotic that I couldn't even edit the episodes to listenability.
That's so on brand.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, when I went to edit, I was like, there's like, no matter how much corralling I tried to do, there were just so many people that wanted to be in on it. And then we recorded this preview a couple months ago, and I'm the world's slowest editor. It's ready to go, and I think it's a good talk through of where the fandom is, the things that are in the teaser and trailer, the first couple of them, and what we might see, and the things that we're excited about. The pod starts out kind of more going through what we had seen to that point, and the characters and the actors, and then the last 20 or 30 minutes really gets into a pretty fast discussion, like where the fandom is, expectations, and what success and failure will look like for the show. We do hit on what it'll mean for the community a little bit, which I do think if the show comes out of the gates hot, we're gonna probably have to how to do multiple episodes each week to cover each show. If it comes out slow, then we might still have to do that, but for less time, because people just want to get on for a couple weeks and complain about how bad it is and drop
Or maybe
off.
we could finally do like live watch parties, and people could just hang out in the chat or something.
Well, that's easier
I think
now.
the first episode everyone will want to comment on. I think it's after that if it ends up being shitty. I think regardless of what the first episode is like, even for people like me I hate to think if I were to go back and listen to that Game of Thrones final episode review, I just remember it being like 4 a.m. and just feeling so dispirited. But even I want to watch this. I'm excited. I'm voyaging positively. And I think that first episode will probably have a Wolfcast, Dragoncast. And like you said, it'll be chaotic. And after that, we'll see.
Yep, agree.
So, do you predict that there will be the Winds of Winter by the time Block 800? I do. I am optimistic.
So if you like gun to my head, I would be like, yeah, but I just won't make any predictions. I'm just over it. Like, I don't know. I think we will get something of the Winds of the Winter someday. That's all I'm sure of now.
If there is, it's because we're slow getting to 800, not because.
Right.
He's got to be
getting close. He's got to be getting
close, right? We did say that in like 2017, Adam.
But it does sound, in the Hollywood Reporter interview where he's talking about what he's done with different characters and how things have moved and he's changed in the writing, it did sound like it felt he was close to it. Like there are issues in the blog where it feels like he's so far from it, like he hasn't even looked at it, he's just fobbing us off. But this one felt like, yeah, I've actually been wrestling with this in my mind, and I've made some decisions and I'm doing this, and I felt okay. It felt the most optimistic I'd felt for years, and then he got COVID, so I don't know.
I don't know how many times I feel like he said he's done this or done that, and I feel like he has, but he goes back and changes stuff and all that. I don't know. Yeah, I just like he's not really too involved in any of the fandom stuff, or he's not super involved in this show. It doesn't seem like. So I guess he's kind of focusing on other stuff, maybe, focusing on writing instead of the other stuff.
Yeah.
It probably behooves us to wrap up by just saying a massive thank you to everyone who's listened to the last 100, everyone who's been a podcast person, everyone who's edited, everyone who's just made, even if they've never been on a podcast, everyone who's just made the community such a joyful and supportive and amazing place during a pandemic.
Absolutely.
Yes. And I feel like we should say,
and the 10 of you that are still listening, there's more to come.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you to the listener. Thank you to the
Yes.
listener.
Thank you
That's
to
for the
listener.
listener to decide.
The book.
If listener, if you found us on iTunes or Spotify or anywhere, if you go to vakpodcast.wordpress.com, you'll find a link to the Discord server there to come join us. And
Yes.
And that's where we're at. Yep.
Yep.
Hello and welcome to Vassals of Kingsgrave, where today we'll be discussing the teaser and the trailer for House of the Dragon in anticipation of the new series on HBO, which is a prequel coming out in August of 2022. We have a large crew today here from Vassals of Kingsgrave. I am Kevin, Uncle Kevin on the Discord, and I'm joined by Abby.
Hi, Abby.
Adam.
It is I, Jon Snow, Lord of the Dragonfort.
Casey.
This is Casey, Blue-Eyed Queen.
Matt.
Yo.
Michael.
This is Michael, Kalwadegi on forums, if we still have those.
They are out there. Michal.
Hello, Ink Azrain on the places.
And Zander.
Yo, Zander, who is always last because it starts with a Z.
Yes, because my list is alphabetical. I did not put it in that order, but it made itself into that order. So shall we begin? House of the Dragon. We can't really do lemon cakes, I don't think, for a teaser and a trailer. So if we just want to do like how excited for the lemon cakes we are, how excited for the dragons, let's jump into it. I'm 5 because I'm a Targaryen nerd. I don't like cheer for them to win, but I do love stories about them. They are chaos.
I'm more excited than I was expecting to be. Like, I think I'll speak for some people that, interest kind of flatlines after a certain event, but like seeing the nice production values of the trailers, I'm like, this actually looks pretty good.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. Like, I didn't really care about Fire and Blood. I read like 50 pages and was like, I don't care about the Targaryens, but I watched the trailer and I was like, wait, this actually looks cool. So I'm excited for some world building, I guess, but I don't really care about the Targaryens. But I'm hype. I'm hype, I guess.
I refuse to get hype on principle, but I like the cast, and it looks cool, and hopefully they hired some actual writers this time. But I'm optimistic.
I can't quit laughing at it. I refuse to get hype on principle.
I mean, that's kind of been my feeling about all of these. But the last trailer, teaser, whatever it was, I was like, okay, this is, I can be a little excited. This will be fun.
I think I'm only like, I'm not like negative, but I'm not excited either. I'm just more okay with that it should be decent enough because not only is there a beginning and an end, but there's major points between, so they just kind of have to make those between parts enjoyable. So it's less of a test than like building something you don't have and a structure or endpoint for.
Xander, you just described a plot.
Yeah, and the Game of Thrones show apparently didn't.
To be fair, most TV shows don't have or follow a strict A to B to Z plot will happen, but
So this is unique, and I have an absolute reason to bring it up.
I'll go. No, I think that's definitely a reason why people should be. Nobody has to be anything, but they could be less skeptical than they might otherwise be. I think it would be harder, not knowing anything about the pilot that was canceled, really. But like, that seemed like it was a its own thing, which has positives and negatives. But like, I don't know. I was kind of like very pro this happening for a long time because I feel like it's a very strong story, and like I just think the material is good. And but like it's hard to theoretically be into something. Um, but it's funny because like not it hasn't necessarily been watching the trailers. It's been listening to like other podcasts talk about the trailers that has really kind of amped up my hype level because I was just like, oh my god, this is like what we used to do, but like,
Yeah.
Less
Mhm.
bitter.
There's like some people that still have the fresh legs that like have that enthusiasm. I'm like, oh yeah, this is this is good stuff. But I
Yeah, I
feel
was
like
listening to.
the canceled series kind of made me like, oh no. But I guess there's COVID concerns and all that. Like, I wonder, like, would we have already had some stuff, further along if it wasn't for all that? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so David J. Peterson, who did the languages for Game of Thrones, said at Ice and Fire Con, pretty much said he really likes the script for House of the Dragon, and he isn't so keen on wasn't so keen on the what was the show that got canceled? I keep wanting to say
Blood
Moonrise
Moon?
Kingdom.
The Long Night one, whatever.
Blood
I don't know
Moon.
if they had a name.
Blood
Did they?
Moon, yeah.
Blood
Moon.
that's right.
He said those scripts
Yeah. Which could have been a disaster.
were kind of meh. Yeah.
I'm
Well,
shocked that they went with that, like even to make a pilot. But anyway, I won't distract you
Where's
anymore.
Dimebag?
that's okay. Casey, I think we got everyone's hype except for yours.
Yeah, so trailer wise, I actually got a little bit more excited. It was, I like Matt Smith. I think he's great. I like seeing him in this show. I think that he looks the part anyways. And I think that, I'm anytime you see dragons in something, I feel like you just get like a little bit more excited for things. This is a weird way to go, but I'm a little bit concerned that HBO is going a little bit towards making a bunch of their shows kind of like kind of how the end of Game of Thrones was, where everything was kind of like just for shock value at the last episode. And there's one other show that's been very popular on HBO that I don't want to spoil anybody on because it's not the topic. But I felt like they did a similar kind of style to that show that felt very Game of Thrones-esque. And so I'm just scared that that's what this is going to be. And I don't want that to happen. I think that Game of Thrones strong points were the first few seasons, and I think I'm also just like still in post cons like depression and like feel like I'm still missing something with that and don't want anything else until that point. But that's a really like depressing way to go with it.
I mean, the first season is likely going to be all set up and or mostly set up for the actual Civil War, and like I've always assumed it's going to end with the death of Viserys. So I think to just kind of match that net energy we got in season 1 of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that's where they're going with this. And the trailer actually made me a bit more optimistic because it seems like, it seems normal, or like, what I would have thought the trailer would have been if, they weren't going for shock value. So I think that like I'm hopeful, but I'm, still cautiously anticipating the show.
Yeah.
I
Well, and
oh,
go for it. Go for it.
I was just. Do we know that it's going to be more than one season? I thought it was a mini series.
No, I mean
Yes,
Oh no,
it is going to be.
they are planning on riding this train all the way to Valhalla. I mean, it's like, yeah,
All right, I'm just
definitely.
uninformed, ignorant.
Yeah. So a couple things. I was going to hit a couple things from the trailer. So just for clarity's sake, the teaser was the one that came out in March 2022, I believe, and it was the shorter of the two that started with Daemon, the rogue prince, saying, "Gods didn't make us kings; dragons did." And the trailer is the one that's about about 30 seconds longer and says, and at the beginning says, brief mortal life is nothing if not the pursuit of legacy, if I wrote that down right. So that said, well, we might jump back and forth a bit between the two of them, but there was, in terms of the first season, I think that's one of the open questions is what exactly is, or how exactly is it going to work from a timeline perspective? Because we've seen now what appears to be Harrenhal, which would be the Council of 101, which is about 30 years before the Dance of the Dragons, and then we have a lot of shots of young Rhaenyra, young Alicent during Viserys' reign. We see young Rhaenyra talking to Rhaenys. We see either Rickard or Rickon Stark. That's apparently a point of debate out in the fandom. Corlys Velaryon and Borman Baratheon swearing to Rhaenyra as a child. We see Rhaenyra dancing with Daemon so that we all can be sufficiently creeped out. And a lot of things that are from the Rogue Prince more, from that decade before the Civil War actually took place. So I say all that just to set up, do we want to see a more linear story? Or would we happy just kind of having some flashbacks to the time when Viserys was still relatively healthy and it was the good times? Or what are we thinking?
I mean, it depends on how
hear
much.
me out. Oop,
Go ahead, man.
Sorry, you go, Matt.
You sure? I mean, it depends on how much. If it's really just like, if they have too much to fit into just do a one episode in the beginning, then yeah, spread it out and just go back and forth. That is something I generally liked, as just like a choice to have to cast both young and old of Rhaenyra and Alicent, and also to make them like closer in age. I actually like that kind of change in choice. And so it's something I'm looking forward to in that. So I don't mind having the flashbacks, especially like the swearing at the beginning. I think that's really important.
Yep. And I do think it seems like there's sort of a setup to go from angry Daemon storming off in his gold cloak, which it shows in the trailer, which I'd have to assume is from the swearing ceremony or somewhere right around there, to the point of him, becoming her favorite creepy uncle again, and them getting married. So it's kind of interesting they've shown both sides of that in the teaser and trailer so far, and I think there'll probably be some legwork put into how they move from one place to the other, more than just the couple little snippets we got in the books, which were foul. Thank you, Mushroom.
I think it's also really interesting to tackle. I mean, I don't know what they're going to do. I thought they were doing flashbacks, and then somebody was like, they could just be telling it linearly, and like that's also a valid way of telling the story. Also, I think in the trailers, Daemon has different lengths of hair at different times, so I think that indicates a passage of time in one direction or other. But I'd really like flashbacks because I think when they're used well, they can be a really sophisticated storytelling technique. And I think for something like a Civil War, like when they announced this show, like just the title, like my dream was that we would start with a conquest, and it's funny because there's so many threads that are already in motion of like the end of Jaehaerys' reign and why that's all fucked up, and like the whole relationship with Alicent and everything, that are already in motion that affects very powerfully the events on the ground when the story starts. And I think that like the story of a Civil War is the story of all of those factors snowballing and becoming breaking out into a war. And I don't know, I just think it would be really interesting to like cut back and forth between what the characters are doing in the present and why they are doing that in the past.
I feel that there are certain scenes where it is just feels very natural to be flashing back to like the swearing in, like the Great Council, and they would be like nice ways to like open a certain episode or whatever. But I can't yeah, imagine that there would be a whole heap of them.
I mean, I think it would be a lot of like relationship stuff, right? Like, you know, if we start with, actually, I don't think they've cast an Aegon, so that also suggests maybe some kind of time specificness that we're dealing with. But like, I don't know.
Which
I just feel
Aegon?
like
Which
uh,
Yeah, as in the Conqueror or
no,
Allison's
Alicent's
son?
kid, yeah,
Yeah.
King, I guess we have to call him. But yeah, I feel like, you know, things like the relationship between Daemon and Rhaenyra, you know, I feel like that will be very powerfully served with flashbacks and, you know, understanding why is the uncle and the niece married, you know, and like the whole situation with the Strongs, and yeah, I don't know. I just think it's very, very potentially very rich.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking as you were saying that, like maybe this isn't this season, but definitely like the season or the episode that Rhaenys dies, if that started with a flashback to the Great Council of 101, that would be a very poetic episode way, you know, very poetic way to do that. Oh yeah, I didn't say at the beginning. Spoilers for House of the Dragon because the books already exist. If you're listening to this and you haven't read The Dance of the Dragons, then I don't know what to tell you.
I don't think.
I mean,
we'll
I
have to
haven't,
on that.
so but I don't care.
So what I wanted to say, because like I feel like this has been the trend in like television and movies the last handful of years is like disjointed timeline storytelling. Like you know, whether it's flashbacks or how Tarantino does it, where he just splices the various story elements, whatever. Um, and to be honest, I think they might do it more like how George writes a proper Song of Ice and Fire POV, where it's not necessarily like he tells you something and then you flash back so you get the relevant scene. I feel like they're kind of gonna give you the relevant scenes, whether it's a flashback or a whole segment, and then continue with whatever they're choosing is the modern day of the story, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. So you're saying you don't think that the flashbacks, it won't be like multiple timelines happening at the same time.
Like it won't be like
Yeah.
it won't be like Book of Boba Fett kind of like flashback, like, oh, here's a flashback, this is what the episode's about, you know. It'll be
Nobody wants
more
that, that's for sure.
exactly. It'll in my opinion, I feel like it might be more a more natural storytelling way, like how George will, you know, kind of mix it up, but it all flows together kind of because it's still one single narrative.
Gotcha. So I will say I believe we have some, on the Aegon the second point, I believe we have some filming shots of what appear to be the Green Boys when they were younger. There's one that I believe is 3 Targaryen boys walking in their green. Well, those would be the only set of 3 blonde hair, purple eye boys because the Strongs wouldn't be that. Excuse me, the Valarian dragon riding boys. But so I think I don't think Aegon the Second's been cut from the story, but I haven't seen who is playing the older one, if that's out there somewhere.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't think he'd been cut, just that maybe they hadn't gotten to that point yet. But yeah, no, that's interesting. I like that a lot of this is mysterious. It's kind of fun.
Yeah. I'll say it does look like they haven't done. I was kind of worried there'd be a decent amount of kind of cutting down on the number of Targaryens, and they appear to have gone the route of doing some things to make them appear distinct. So obviously they'll use the clothing, and then like the Valarians using darker skin to signify them, which I think will just help from a simplification standpoint as a viewer. that not everyone looks the exact same in the Civil War.
It's also like there's such a small detail, but like we all remember the Osha, Asha, Yara kerfuffle experience, and like the fact that they didn't change either Rainey's or Rhaenyra's names, and we're just gonna have to, be smart humans about it and recognize different people with slightly similar names. Like that's a small thing that kind of gives me some confidence.
It's like they don't think the viewers are absolute morons.
Imagine.
Didn't they change Rickon and Rickard? That was like the one thing I saw floating around.
So yeah, I think it's the last thing I saw was just the subtitles were wrong.
Oh, interesting.
So like, because he clearly says Rickon. So yeah, I think it's just the subtitles were off and they didn't change it. They left it the way it's supposed to be.
When I watched it last, I thought I heard Rickard, but it's really close, so I probably heard it wrong.
Yeah.
I think that HBO may have figured out that like people don't remember the names anyways unless they've already read them, so might as well just make the characters look different and they'll be good. All right. So other fun things from this discussion: the Iron Throne got beefed up.
I like this one slightly more.
Yeah, they
as long as
appear
the
to
dragon doesn't burn it.
Yeah, they appear to have left the actual seat alone and then just added like a big fence row of swords. Well, that looks pretty cool. Like, I think
It looks a little taller too.
maybe they added a little bit, but they had to keep it visually close enough to equal to the Game of Thrones one, and I think they did that. Are there any particular characters anybody's like hyped to see?
Not characters, but counter to Casey, I am not excited for Matt Smith. And really, it's just because he has such a distinctive face to me that anytime he's in anything, I'm like very taken out of what I'm watching because I'm like, oh, it's Matt Smith. I mean, like, also, it just has some. I really don't want to like body shame, but it's something with the fact that he has no eyebrows. And can they just tattoo on some eyebrows, draw on some eyebrows? Like, come on. And so every time I see him, I'm just like, oh, it's the guy with no eyebrows. And it just takes me out of everything because I'm just looking at the fact that he has no eyebrows.
I will say, like on that day, because before they released the trailer, they released a bunch of like character posters, and they all looked really good except for his. And I was just like, oh, it's like a weird, creepy looking picture. But like in in actual action, like I thought it looked fine in the trailer. Whether it was just like his demeanor, how he carried himself or something, I was like, oh, this is fine. It's just the poster that looks weird, at least to me.
I'm sure I'll get used to it, but I just see him and I'm like, I've never even watched Doctor Who, but I'm like, that's the guy from Doctor Who with no eyebrows. Anytime he's in anything, that's just exactly what I think the entire time. But I don't know, maybe I'll get used to it. We'll see.
I feel like once I watched Matt Smith in The Crown, I like saw him as more of an actor than like Doctor Who. So I think that helped for me anyways.
I mean, I have no opinion on Matt Smith as an actor because I've never really watched him anything, but like the biggest thing for me was just like, that's not Damon.
Oh, I disagree. I think I don't know if he's not Damon. I don't know if he's Damon or not, but he's very, to me, he's like, he looks very standard Targaryen, like very severe facial features.
I agree with like he does look Targaryen, but I think, I don't know, I always envision Damon as hot, I guess. And like I don't find Matt Smith attractive.
Thank you, Xander. Thank you. I have had so many debates with people about if he is attractive or not, and I'm sorry, Matt Smith, but he's maybe if he had eyebrows. It's like I know so many people who have no eyebrows and they just draw them on. They just draw them on, or they get them tattooed onto their faces. And if my friends can do it, so can he. If he's a famous person, he has the money.
It's a style.
Yes.
Yeah, as I say, it's
This is
clearly a
fully
choice
cast.
at this time, right?
Unless he's a drag queen, I see no reason for him to have no eyebrows. Okay, he's not drawn on
This has
weird.
become bully cast.
He's not drawn on weird
I would
eyebrows.
just like to say on the record, it has nothing to do with the lack of eyebrows, just personal preference and taste.
I mean, he's kind of like a gangly, weird-looking dude. So I can't really speak on like if he's hot or not. But like, I agree with what Michal said. It was always like, oh, there's the doctor, and then like in The Crown, he's actually really good in that. And I think the blonde hair is a little weird to me, but I'm sure after an episode, I'll just be used to it.
I mean, it's not to go too into this, but it is a little bit of that like current crop of like, well, not really current. They're a couple, cycles behind at this point, but like the Cumberbatch, the Hiddleston, like all these people have like very serpentine kind of looks to them with like very prominent cheekbones and like very
Hopelessly British.
Yeah, so I classify Smith in that category. I haven't actually really seen anything else that he's been in. I didn't watch Doctor Who or The Crown. But he, I trust that he's a good actor, and like basically I'm slightly scared that it's stunt casting just in case, but like I don't really think it's stunt casting. And also Damon is morally reprehensible, so it's fine with me if he's not that good looking.
Yeah. Along those lines, I did love the Viserys actor. I was like, I love when Targaryens, like, especially Targaryen men, hit like middle age and just look so washed up and sad. He's just got the whole look of like the guy that still like goes to his high school's football games and talks about the glory days. And then goes and like drinks at the motorcycle bar every Friday night and still talks about the football game. like just a sad man in his 50s. Just I'll bully some people since we're not bullying Matt Smith anymore. Yeah. So a couple other. I'll kind of keep running through things from these teaser and trailers. We see a golden dragon flying. I think it's got to be either Cyrax or Sunfire, so that's cool.
The colors of the dragons that's what I'm most excited about. Like how do they look compared to each other? How do they look in like the dragon fights? Do they go like a dull blue or a bright blue? Yeah, colors. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, I'm all over that. Like, Tessarian better be like the most bright, like not ridiculous, not Smurf blue, but like
royal blue,
yeah,
sapphire.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to like really the dragons are the thing I'm most excited about because they definitely have the money to do all the things with the dragons and they better do it. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and it's
it is. No, go ahead.
I was just say real fast. It's way more relevant that they are distinguishable from one another than the three from Game of Thrones.
Yes, so, I mean, yeah, Dany's dragons should have been very distinct, and that was a disappointment.
Ooh, do y'all think we get Balerion?
He's still around.
When does he come
died in Viserys' reign. Yeah, Viserys is the last rider of him.
Yeah. He died in Jaehaerys' reign, actually. So that probably was before even the Great Council 101. So probably not happening.
Maybe we'll see his skull.
Probably, yeah. How how about a couple things? We have the hand pin back. Saw that on Otto Hightower. Otto Hightower had some good FaceTime in the trailer, telling Allison that they play an ugly game and asking if she has what it takes to win it. Thoughts on Otto and Allison and the Greens in general?
Excited just to get more families like Hightowers and shit that we haven't seen on screen before.
Yeah, that's true. We haven't seen them.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the strengths of, kind of the Westeros fiction in general is the houses and people, Baratheons and Starks, and it'll be good to have a series that you got sides, people can pick sides, and maybe you could root for a house that in Game of Thrones maybe you wouldn't have. I think just for viewership in general, that's a good thing. So, especially new houses.
Yeah, I definitely felt like he was channeling Tywin, like the cadence that Otto used, like it was all, and even the way he sort of stood, it just was all very like channeling Tywin. Like, hey, remember this like grandpa that was Hand of the King and tried to maneuver everything for his family's benefit, and his daughter married a king. Like it felt very like beyond just the story parallels. It felt very just cadence and delivery. It all was so Tywin-esque.
I am concerned that they're going to make me like or feel bad for Alicent, and they probably are. Like,
Absolutely. No, I've been a big fan of Olivia Cook for a while now. I mean, ever since like Thoroughbreds. And so yeah, definitely something I'm looking forward to.
and also just like I feel like they might play into the like much younger woman marrying a much older king, and like kind of delving into some of that is interesting dramatic material, but also like sympathetic making for a woman who in the book I don't have a lot of sympathy for.
Mm-hmm.
She definitely was pressed to be a political actor from a very, very young age, which so is Rhaenyra, right? So that in and of itself is pretty traumatizing and tough. So I'm hoping it's, we kind of are in that situation where we cheer for all of them sometimes and hate all of them sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously some Anne Boleyn in that character, so.
So just other quick things. We do get a quick shot of black fire in Viserys' hand. So unbridled hype for that. I don't know if there's anything to say about that other than it looks like we'll get to see Blackfire and Dark Sister on screen, and that's exciting to me.
Maybe we'll get to see how dragons are made.
There is a shot of an egg over coals. I believe Damon's in that shot, so it's likely when he took the one for Mysaria for his unborn child, is my guess.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a shot at the beginning of the teaser, I believe, where he's carrying that, or that's at the beginning of the trailer. So it looks like that whole timeline's there, and then I don't know if that's Mysaria that is like running at someone with a knife in the throne room.
I think it's Alice. Yeah, it looked like.
Yeah, I thought it was Alicent.
Alicent.
Oh, that makes sense. So it's like the small council, probably. Cool.
I was assuming that this was the knife used to slash out Aemon's eye, but I could be completely wrong.
Oh yes, it's the I've read
right,
it's the
cat's paw dagger. Jesus Christ. That's one of the few things that annoys me. Where it's just like, why is that there? It was a dumb thing in Game of Thrones.
Go off. I mean, I like it, but I just want to hear the unbridled anger.
No, I just don't like that. Like basically, it was just it was a stupid plot line in the bad parts of Game of Thrones. So I just don't like that they're putting connective tissue towards like the bad parts of that.
It just peels for off an old scab.
Yeah, just for like the
Yeah.
sake of because it's just for the sake of connective tissue that's not needed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
but
the only
I kind of enjoy the. I mean, I didn't recognize it. I'm not like that visually familiar with everything, but like, and I get that frustration. But I'm kind of like, well, it's something that logically the Targaryens probably would have had. So like, I'm kind of into that. You know, as long as it's not necessarily like long lingering shots on this dagger, like wink, wink, wink. You know, if it just happens to be a thing that is used in the plot, and could have been any other dagger, but happened to be this one because that's what whoever it is who attacks Aemon happened to find. That kind of thing I'm good with. I guess it'll depend on how they handle it.
Is it an Easter egg or not?
Right.
The dragon's egg.
Yeah.
Well,
Ooh.
I was just about to say, so if it has a dragonbone hilt and she's got it before the Dance of the Dragons, I mean, the most likely bone source is Balerion, right?
Or Meraxes.
But,
Or they brought it
yeah,
with them from Valyria. That could also be.
yeah, Stark. I guess using an animal's. If you like the dragons and think of them as majestic, using their bones for anything is kind of sad. So,
Well, I mean, I kind of figured they just because they only keep the heads as trophies, so like whatever else they'd probably save and use for other things, kind of like Native Americans and bison herds.
that's true. Targaryens are known for their thriftiness. Wow, I really thought that was funny. I thought that was going to go really well.
I feel like we all collectively just like decide don't laugh at this. Like fuck you.
Kevin, I laughed. I was just
Hey,
muted.
I
Okay.
laughed, but I was muted. Yeah, see, you got us. You got us.
They're
So
like,
no one's mentioned the best part of the trailer, right? How
no.
like the Iron Throne actually looks like super imposing now.
Yeah, we talked
Oh,
about
like-
that.
that was brought up earlier.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
No, go on.
We haven't mentioned the men will literally do anything else except go to therapy line.
Yep.
Yes. But men will burn the realm down, talk about random sports players for hours.
Starting up before.
Team Baratheon's got a strong defense this year.
Miami has 69 points right now. Nice.
Nice.
Yep. We'll
Nice.
go ahead and start assigning Song of Ice and Fire houses to NBA teams as another way to avoid therapy. Apologies to Michal, Casey, and Abby.
Fantasy Westeros. Let's start betting on dragons in the new show. Because who knows, it might not play out like the books, right?
All right. I got a couple other things that I wrote down real fast. So there's a scene where a shot where a coffin, it looks like, or a sarcophagus is pushed into the water. It made me think of As I Lay Dying, but I don't think they were channeling a William Faulkner book. Maybe. But I'm assuming that's either Laenor or Laena Velaryon, since it wasn't someone who was burned. It appeared to be a funeral. Got to be one of those two, I would think. We get to find out what color Vhagar is. Who's hype about that?
I'm dying to know, actually. I'm really excited. I'm guessing.
I always
not gonna
assumed he
be-
was green. I didn't realize we didn't know.
He's the one of the original three we don't know. It's like, oh my
wow.
god.
I've
The
always,
thought
I always
is
forget
always-
that it's unknown.
yeah, I've always assumed he was green.
She.
I never realized that.
Oh yeah, it's a she.
Oh,
Vhagar
my
has
bad.
laid eggs.
Yeah. If it ends up being orange, I'm gonna be like, yes.
Considering that Vhagar is going to be fighting Melis, the Red Queen, and Caraxes, the Bloodworm, I'm guessing they're probably not going to make her red. That's my guess.
That's probably
Yes.
safe.
I I think the thought in terms of green is just that Danny's dragons are essentially black, green, and white, and we know that Valerian is black, and that Meraxes is kind of white, creamish along those lines. Silver. Okay, so I think the thought is they would line up. Danny's dragons would to the original 3 from the Conquest, but they don't have to. That's just a thing people have kind of guessed. But I'm excited. It could be anything. It could be purple. There's none of them are purple.
Fucking pink.
Yeah. Well,
the Samuel L. Jackson of the.
Sunfire has a good amount of pink in it. It's like gold with pink wings, so that could be cool. Very excited for just that character.
She looks
in general.
She looks incredible.
Wait, what is the line? I'm forgetting. I only watched it the one time.
Men would sooner put the realm to the torch than have a woman as their queen or ruler.
Ruler or on the throne, something like that.
Okay, yeah. So it is literally just men would rather than go to therapy.
Yeah, it is a very, very clear nod.
Listen, that line is there so HBO can show boobs and say that they are fighting sexism.
They're empowering boobs.
So that's something I actually wanted to bring up because, like, obviously there's going to be nudity, there's going to be sex, there's going to be crazy violence. But, like, I feel like one of the few ways this show can, like, really quickly go off the rails is if they engage in the kind of, like, dehumanizing sexualization and, like, violent sex, like, you know, like rape or whatever. Like, again, I'm not saying that violence and sex is off the table, but I feel like there was a certain quality of, like, not character, but just you felt very gross watching stuff on Game of Thrones because you felt like you were trying to be shocked or titillated or both. And I feel like if they can avoid that thing that makes people go like, oh, I just felt like I was watching Game of Thrones, I felt gross, then they'll be in a fairly decent position.
I feel like these writers will be smart enough to avoid that kind of gratuity, but I guess we'll see.
I'm about to say, like, I've always assumed that was very much a D&D thing, where they were, 95% of that. So, like, without them, it just naturally has to go down. But in general, I am assuming that the behind the scenes people are just in general better for this.
Well,
maybe
I think
they have some women on the writing staff.
that could be one thing. But, like, also, and, like, I was quite young when Game of Thrones came out. When did it first air? 2012?
2011 was when.
Okay, yeah. So I was 12, so I'd never seen anything on HBO in my entire life. And, like, I'm watching Sopranos right now, and there's a lot of boobs, and, like, that was late 90s. But I do think that Game of Thrones kind of did set a standard for I mean, someone could correct me because, again, like, I'd never seen anything on HBO before then, so, like, I don't know how gratuitous nudity was. But I do feel like Game of Thrones had this, like, I guess, not quota, I can't think of the right word, but something to live up to because they were known for the show that was, like, sex, violence, nudity and stuff. And I think now hopefully they don't need to have that because they've established themselves. Because I mean, I don't watch that much HBO, but I do. I mean, I know Casey said watch Euphoria if you want to see dongs or something.
Right, yeah.
I've never seen Euphoria, but
yeah, you want to see some dick? Go to Euphoria.
Okay, so I don't know. Never mind. Maybe every HBO show just needs to have random nudity for them to be like, it's HBO. But I do think that something about Game of Thrones was everybody knew this was the show for, like, boobs and violence.
Yeah, it was part of the brand.
Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe that's just because it was an HBO show. But to me, that's.
I mean, I think that's kind of HBO's brand, because, Abby, you officially made me feel old because I'm like, well, there was True Blood. That was, like, my life for a few years. And that was very, I didn't watch the later seasons, but it was more like fun. And then Game of Thrones kind of took a bit of a dark turn where I feel like they kind of exploited some things and went off book for the thrill of it. I don't know what they'll do here. I think that part of what they like about Game of Thrones is that even if it was bad, everybody talked about it. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they do something like
It's a crossover hit.
I hope they don't, but like, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I feel like the thing with HBO is like what you don't have in other countries was like being able to have like nudity or even like curse words until probably the mid 2000s or whatever. You couldn't say like shit and fuck and stuff, except for on premium services. So that was sort of like you'd go to HBO and you'd have The Sopranos or whatever, and they'd have all the curse words and there's boobs, and it was sort of casual, but like that was part of the I guess like sort of part of the selling point. But I don't know. Like some shows got really gratuitous with it, like Game of Thrones, just Pycelle and Entourage, but a lot of other shows it was more just kind of it was there, and just like let you know you were watching something where like they didn't have limits.
Yeah, I guess kind of going back to our pre-recording discussion when we were talking about Skins, I remember watching Skins as a kid, and like there's a couple scenes with boobs, and I was like, what? This is what it's like in England? They can just have this on TV and it's okay? Yeah, and so I guess I see what you're saying is because you still can't have that on a non-premium channel in the United States, so I get what you're saying.
You can do more and more like FX and stuff, and you get late night, and like there has been some nudity and whatnot, but I feel like
Netflix,
like Stars and what's the other one, have like really pushed the like gore, and like go watch like Spartacus or some of those shows, and you're like, oh yeah, they're really pushing like what they can do, whereas HBO still mostly tried to like not make it all about that, but then sometimes you're like, yeah, this is excessive.
Well, I mean, even when I'm watching The Sopranos, sometimes I'm like, oh, they're just in the strip club because they want to be able to be like, look, boobs.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm kind of wondering how much of the brief for the show is the like, and in the pilot and in the first 6 episodes, you need a moment at least where people are going to be like, oh, this is like Game of Thrones. Like there's a certain like identity factor that I hope they don't feel like they have to establish, but that
our plucky sex worker gauze.
Yeah, they I mean they might like they have plenty of opportunity. Like wasn't Damon
I'm off
like
to King's Landing?
Oh, her name
I'm sure
is
Damon will be
SOR
like that.
instead of ROS.
Yeah, it's gonna be.
Yeah, I'm sure there's gonna be.
It's not David and Dan, so I don't know, but I do feel like there's gonna be some sort of like, this is the random made-up character, like, and you're like, oh no. I don't know, but do you feel like they're gonna have it like we have to have a Littlefinger, we have to have a Varys? Like, do you think they're gonna like try to push that kind of formula too much and then ruin it, or?
No, I don't think they'll have that.
I mean,
it's different.
But, like,
isn't that formula kind of innate in the source material though? Because
Yeah.
like there is a master whisperer,
some of that
there is a hand of the king, and they all kind of do play the same roles,
But they're
Well,
not
that's
carbon
the
copies of
personalities of
each other. They're, yeah. What is it,
they can
Laris?
function the same, but
Guys, Laris isn't Varys. George is more creative than
but
that.
but
That I would forgive them if they changed that name,
is
actually.
he though? What if they just cast the same actor? So many questions.
That'd be great. Yeah, he's everywhere. It's fine.
Varys is no longer a mermaid; he's an immortal mermaid.
Fire cannot kill a mermaid.
The ever living.
Yes.
Oh man. I mean, if they were gonna recast someone, I was actually really hoping that they would cast Harry Lloyd as somebody, because I thought he was great, and he's very.
But that's one you could
nice
do
to look
without
at.
like anyone really, you know what I mean? Because some ancestors like, oh, you're the spitting image of your grandfather, and he was only in the first season, so.
I'm barely. I mean, he was in like 5, 6 episodes, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he had probably less than an hour of screen time, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that worked really well, and he's great.
I mean, I'm going to be expecting some cameos from the original cast. Like, I don't mind, but I'm sure that there will be some random cameos, but as long as they're not like, look, this
If
is the
Sean
person.
Bean is in Flea Bottom.
Yeah, like as long as they're not like, oh, hey, like random person walking down the street, zoom in and it's, you know, like Maisie Williams or whatever. Like as long as it's not that, but if it's like, you know, they're there, whatever, you know, there's only so many actors in the world, you know, and it's sometimes fun to be able to be like, hey, that person.
I admit that the
So
the northern accent made me not cringe, but go a little bit like, all right, that thing. we still do that, I guess.
Yeah, very Scottish.
I don't want.
My campus, Rebbitzin, was from North England, and she could do the best Jon Snow impersonation. It was amazing. I loved it.
You loved it, but you didn't.
All you
want
got to do is brood.
There is one actor recast, and it was, I cannot think of his name. They played Hugh of the Vale, the guy that the mountain eviscerates. And
Fair enough.
and
Are we counting that?
yeah, he's in it. I mean, he's got like 30 seconds in Game of Thrones, and then he's playing the Lannister twins, right? The brothers.
Oh. How many people in Game of Thrones though played like 10 different guards? Like
That happened. Yeah, that happened.
Minor performers like just played a bunch of different random people.
That happened a bit.
He's playing both twins?
Well, the guy that played Night King, didn't he also play one of the Gregors?
Well, because there were 2 different actors for that as well.
There were 3 for Gregor.
No, for Night King though. I think.
Oh, that's right.
I don't remember which one. I don't think the last one was this. I think the first one played. Maybe I don't know who he played. He played someone else. Yeah. Or he might have been like one of the Mountain's men. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But anyway, tangent. I know like after the Game of Thrones show, they had what was it called? Like the last call, or they had something, you know, going over kind of wrapping up the series, and they went over some of the extras that have been like all over the place. They were like, oh yeah, I played a Stark and a Lannister and a and I was a Baratheon. Like they just were like, yeah, they just show up and put on whatever armor they wanted. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, like that one redheaded guy that they got that played a Lannister guard. Insane.
Yeah, there were a couple of them. They were at Con of Thrones, weren't they? A few years
No, I don't think Ed Sheeran was at Con of Thrones.
No, not I meant like
We were all on mute again. Sorry.
the extras. Although, how do you know he wasn't? You wouldn't even recognize him. Not in that outfit. It's just a random Lannister soldier. Could be anyone. Everyone gets so mad about the Ed Sheeran, but like, he didn't sing. Like, if suddenly he was like, you know.
He did sing.
No, but like, he didn't sing like Ed Sheeran songs. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Singing "Shape of You."
Yeah, like if he was like singing something and it had like that kind of poppy modern beat, I'm like, oh god. But I'm like,
I'm in love with the Stark in you.
Yeah. That would have been a bit much, but it was fine.
Oh my gosh.
They were, they were just sort of running out of things to do.
All right. Well, I don't know if there's any other deep thoughts. I'll add that I like how the teaser started with Daemon in that dungeon with a dragon, and the trailer ended with it. So, I don't know if you'll notice, but Daemon Targaryen and dragons will be important in this story. So, any other thoughts before we wrap up?
I have a question. Do you guys think we'll ever get any Blackfire shows, or we're only going to get the Blackfires through the Dunk and Egg show?
I don't know that there's enough material. Like, you'd have to have a really good writer to actually do the Blackfire rebellions with the material that we have, I feel like.
I guess if you went to Aegon IV's reign, kind of similar to what they're doing now for the setup with the Dance of Dragons, it's just minus the dragons. But then you have like 17 years before like the actual war happens, so just like lots and lots of setup.
Yeah, that's a very difficult story to tell. I feel like Dunk and Egg is
It's not
actually the best way to
sexy
tell
the
it,
way
you
that
know?
dance was.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dunkin' Egg would be great.
Well,
Yeah,
they're supposedly making one, but they're supposedly making a lot of things.
Yeah,
yeah,
the 9 sequels that were in development.
yeah. But they're going to make a ton of these. Like, I just don't see this dying off anytime soon.
Especially if House of the Dragon is a hit, which I think it could be.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's the burning question. Can you win back
But-
the
but
crowd
each-
after shitting the bed?
Yeah, right.
If it comes
Well, I
out
mean,
strong, especially people that aren't familiar with this story, yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Yeah, because I mean, how many episodes would it take to hook the people that were burned from?
And all of you know,
what, maybe
that the
2
people,
episodes?
the people that were burned the strongest were the people that were like the most invested in the fandom, right? The filthy casuals were like, oh, hey, I thought that kind of ended poorly. It was a little lame, and then they moved on like the next day. So,
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people
they'll
that.
be back.
I mean, yeah, there's
They had to
also a
watch
lot of
Tiger King.
people-
Come on.
I met someone who said that they thought season 8 was pretty good, and I was like, oh wow.
Oh, I know a lot of people like that. They're like, yeah, man, it's been awesome. I'm like,
Yeah, no.
uh-huh.
Yeah, my dad
Burn.
actually,
Best season
he's
ever.
yeah, he hadn't read the books, but he watched the whole series after it was already done during COVID, and he absolutely loved every second of it, even the ending. And I was like, I remember watching episode 3 of the last season with him, and I was like, don't you think that was a letdown? He was like, no, that was amazing, and I was just like, oh no.
You know what? People like
Let's,
that, they live longer.
Oh, I hope so for him.
yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Well, I think this definitely was the one to try to win people back. Like, it's the most teed up story with so many parallels to Game of Thrones that are just easy to draw. Matt was upset about the cat's paw dagger, but like there's a ton of that stuff that's just easy connective tissue to do, and make people, just make the casual viewer go, Otto Hightower really does remind me of Tywin. He's really like a Tywin, and there makes it sort of easy for getting people back engaged. I feel like this one, and it's high on dragons and see about tits.
I mean, it's
But
kind of the same way that we as like a Song of Ice and Fire fans would read this material for this first time. It's like, oh yeah, Otto Hightower, he kind of does remind me of something,
Yeah.
So I agree with you. There is enough connective tissue, even with like a recognizable prop, that like it will be similar enough, but far enough from the story of Game of Thrones that I think people will give it that chance.
But that's the thing. It's not like Robert's Rebellion, where I know a lot of people wanted that, and I'd like to see that at some point. Where it's like I feel like that would be too much rehashing too soon. Like we already know a decent bit about that, even in the show. And it's like characters you go, oh, that's Ned. That Ned doesn't live up to my Ned. Like this is like it's the direwolf, but it's like, hey, this is a completely different direwolf. What's going on? And there's more dragons, and people love the dragons. So I think this is their best chance to have another kind of breakaway series for however long they can keep it.
I also think like this is gonna sound sad, but like it's kind of our demographic that might be part of determining the fate of the show, right? Because if like us, there are certain people in our demographic who have been or like near us who were big Game of Thrones fans and are so burned that they're never coming back. Like just as a matter of principle, they're not doing it.
Right.
And then you have a lot of people in the more casual who were like maybe they hated the last season or they were indifferent to it, but like I feel like the people who have some links to the intense fandom, like what
They're the
we
ones that are gonna
transmit
get
is
people
going to
back.
be Yeah.
Yeah, the tastemakers, as we'll call ourselves.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it has nothing to do with actual reviews. I'm sure that
No,
will
it
be
has nothing to do
absolutely
with any of that.
irrelevant.
But I feel like, well, they used to talk about the water cooler talk and all that. But I feel like you are right, and even people that liked the show and like even enjoyed the last season and all that, but like we're like, oh well, I'm done with it. They might be like, well, I don't know if I don't know what this is. I might want to check it out. So the people like us that'll show up to the office and, oh man, House of the Dragon, man, it's 3 episodes in. Oh man, this is crazy. Then they go, oh, I'll have to check that out. You know,
Yeah.
um, not
It,
that
I
they're
don't know.
against it, but
I tend to think Game of Thrones has enough name recognition that the casuals are gonna know about it.
oh, they're
yeah,
gonna know about it. It's just
yeah.
whether they're in
Well,
a fascinating position where they have all of the good stuff. They almost don't need to advertise because it's Game of Thrones, and
right.
yet also people might not watch because it's Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
And
but I don't.
we're in the streaming age where stuff sneaks up on you too. You know, like people are like, oh yeah, the final season of Ozark's out. You're like, wait, it is, and it's been out for 2 weeks, and then you go watch it. So like people don't pay as close attention to marketing and all that as they used to. I feel like.
Yeah, yeah. I think I don't want to overinflate our sense of
No,
importance
I mean
for the
not
Oh,
hardcore
that
us
was
fans.
a joke. That was
specifically.
a joke.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely don't mean that people are going to be listening to us. I just feel like, I mean,
The
hype
type of
for Game of
person that's
Thrones came
exuberant will bring
from,
people in.
yeah, like the
Yeah.
first couple of seasons, like Game of Thrones didn't have like press interviews and stuff until the third season, which is a big part of how networks usually promote their shows. And like it's, we're obviously starting on like a completely different level at this point.
Right.
I feel like if you get that base, then it's a lot easier to like ignite the other people as opposed to like the people who are like, what do you mean? I don't like fantasy. I don't want to watch dragons and whatever.
Yeah. Because even the first couple of seasons, the podcasts and just like the kind of the community and people just talking about it kind of wasn't what it is now. And I remember I hadn't read the books or anything, and there was an article, I forget what it was, but it was like, hey, the next great whatever series is about to come, and detailed. Here's the books, and here's the show, and it's coming. It was like a week before the show aired, and I read this whole thing like, oh wow, this sounds really exciting. Like I didn't really know much about it, but I feel like it was still like super low key. You were like, okay, I'm like watching this nerd show. Like, you weren't gonna go into the office being like, man, did you see this like this night show with like the different houses and they got dragons and wolves and shit? And they'd be like, okay, calm down, nerd. So I
Okay,
felt like that wasn't the conversation right away the first season.
Yeah, but like even like when Game of Thrones was at its peak, like there were the three people in my office, including myself, who would be like, "Oh, did you see it? Like it was so good, or it was so terrible, or I can't stand these people." And then like there were like the five people that were like, or like everybody else in the office was just like, "Oh, they're talking about Thrones again. Oh, I want to
I
get
don't know
back
because
to,
it felt like
gotta
almost
get back
everyone I work
to
with
Bachelorette."
at least talked about it, but there were a lot of people that I would that like do not do genre stuff at all. That would be like they'd come to work wearing the Game of Thrones scrub hats, and they would be like, oh yeah man, I'm all about that Game of Thrones, and I'm like, really? Like, do you know these things exist? Like they were the kind of people that didn't really seem into it, but they got really into this show. They got swag and all that. So I don't know.
I mean, Game of Thrones took my dad, who like his favorite show ever was The Big Bang Theory, and after Game of Thrones, he watched every medieval period piece. I mean, my dad's
He's
like
watching.
texting me. He's texting me about Versailles,
He's watching that Orlando Bloom one in Jerusalem.
like The Last Kingdom. He's all about. So there was a big cultural effect.
Yeah, like Vikings came out, Last Kingdom, like those. I feel like those have been fairly popular too,
I mean,
with kind of the same crowd.
everybody's really into Bridgerton right now. I'm sure, like as a period thing, it's gonna be good for the costumes and the
yeah, that's why
I think
people watch Bridgerton.
I think though Game of Thrones is a harder sell because
Lord Targaryen court.
I think Game of Thrones is a bit of a harder sell though because it's fantasy. Because it's like my dad loves historical, like he likes like Marco Polo and I can't think of any other shows, but he likes all those like violent historical shows. But he could never watch Game of Thrones. I tried so hard to get him to watch it, and he was like, "Ugh, fantasy. I can't do it." So I don't know.
I was just waiting for Gandalf to show up.
Well, like I think it's even though it is this epic, it is also people are like, oh, it has dragons, so it's for nerds.
Yeah, but Game of Thrones is like fantasy light because like you get a lot of people who are just like, ooh, political discourse. Like,
Right.
you know, it's not like, you know, I watched I think it was one of the Hobbit movies, and the dragons started talking, and I was like, I'm done. I can't do this.
That was
Oh my
too
God.
far.
But they talk about spells and magic, but no one's being like chanting weird shit and drawing circles and like, you're like, oh yeah, we're doing spells, and they're just like forging swords. You're like, I don't know, man. Like the dragons are like the most magical thing, and we kind of get a few of those, but
The thing is, it's really easy to forget like how quickly relatively nerddom has become like extremely accessible. Like, yeah, when Game of Thrones came out, it was a nerd show. You know what else came out in like 2010, 2011, or I guess 2008 was Iron Man. Like, and that like the MCU was kind of like barely underway. Avengers came out in 2012.
yeah, 2011 was like Thor and Captain America, and like those were just sort of, and those weren't even like super popular, right? Like
Yeah, the MCU was not the MCU, and Game of Thrones was not Game of Thrones. So I think it's interesting, I guess, that we're getting to kind of replay all that, but in the geeks have inherited the Earth world.
Yeah.
Listen, anime is becoming mainstream. Nothing is right in this world. Everything is going on fire.
All right. Well, this has been our coverage of
To fire!
Everything is terrible. Everything sucks these past 2
Everything's
weeks.
on fire, so this show might
We
be as
didn't
well.
start the fire.
Uh,
All right.
Started the fire. Just kidding. It was Allison.
One time when Greg was drunk, he sang that song word for word in front of my dad, and it was really funny.
When I was 11, we were doing Greek mythology for my English class, and we had to put on a play, and my English teacher rewrote that entire song to be about Greek mythology, and I still know it.
I
That's
don't know
fun.
that I've ever hated a teacher more
Oh my
in this
God.
moment.
Oh my God. You're gonna have to text us those lyrics sometimes.
I don't know if you guys are gonna diss my third grandma. I don't know if I can do this. Okay.
Okay.
I love my 6th grade English teacher. She's like my third grandma.
Text everyone except for me. I'll bear the punishment for my behavior alone. All right. House of the Dragon. We loved it. We're gonna love it. No choice, right? Anything else anyone has to say? Or are we wrapping this up?
I'm excited for some potential lemon cakes.
I'm more excited now that we've talked than I was when we started.
I'm excited to have something to talk about with people.
yeah.
As you move to the woods.
I'm excited
Okay.
I'm excited to have a chance to go to New York City with Michal and go to another bar and totally destroy their local trivia. Yeah. Those poor guys. There had been like people who had been like winning every week, I think. Yeah, they've been winning for like 2 years. Destroy them.
Like, who are these people? Brought in a ringer.
Gosh.
Was this like Game of Thrones trivia or like regular trivia?
It was Game of Thrones
Oh,
trivia
okay.
before watching the show on Sunday, and these people had been
This
winning
is
for like the
amazing.
past 2 seasons, and like we won the last one, and so
it was season 7, right? That we were there for the finale. Yeah. Oh, sorry guys.
You ruined their lives.
I know. They probably still hate us.
Yeah.
As
Probably like the
punishment, they
only
have to
one-
listen to this podcast.
Get wrecked, nerd.
This is the only Song of Ice and Fire podcast they're allowed to listen to is us.
Oh no, that's such a punishment. That's
Yeah.
cruel. That's cruel and unusual.
Oh man. We don't have a constitution anymore.
Oh, I know. I better be getting an A on my con law exam. I better be getting and my family law exam.
Okay. Third try. We're ending. Hot D, House of the Dragon. Everyone get hype. Vassals of Kingsgrave. We just talked about it. Thank you for listening. I'm Uncle Kevin. I had 8 other wonderful hosts, and I don't have the list in front of me, and I'm a monster, but love them all. Come find us on Discord. Vassals of Kingsgrave. Woo!
See you in August, guys.
Done.
We will have coverage after each week after every episode of House of the Dragon, starting in August 2022. Okay.
Kevin, don't promise that. Jeez.
Whenever it airs. Yeah.
Oh, we will.
When we get to 1,000, I'm optioning the podcast story to HBO.
Adam wisely bought the rights at episode 186.
That's right. Mind my rights.